Welcome to your dose of wowness.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that is quite literally mind-bending. We are rigorously investigating the scientific puzzle of near-death experiences. We're going to explore what modern medicine has actually documented, what it absolutely cannot explain yet, and why the edge of human consciousness represents arguably the most fascinating unsolved mystery in science right now.
To really understand this, we have to start with the clinical reality of a guy known as Patient 57. Picture this: Southampton General Hospital. This man goes into cardiac arrest. His heart completely stops, and the medical team immediately rushes in to begin resuscitation. For a documented period of time, his heart was not beating, and the monitor showed absolutely zero detectable electrical activity in his brain. By every clinical measure we rely on, he was dead. And that's exactly why this case is so gripping. We have this extreme dramatic tension between absolute medical certainty and an experience that should be entirely impossible.
Because when he was finally revived, we're hit with a massive, mind-boggling question. How did he describe the room? How on earth could a man with absolutely zero brain activity accurately describe the specific positions of his medical team, the exact equipment they were using on him, and the precise conversations taking place during his resuscitation? He perceived things he should have been medically, physically incapable of perceiving.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. The Patient 57 anomaly. 2. Core phenomenology and the Lancet study. 3. Neurological explanations. 4. The 2023 gamma findings. 5. Children's NDEs. And 6. Distressing NDEs and transformation. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Part 1. The Patient 57 anomaly, the AWARE study's most challenging case. Now, this comes directly from Dr. Sam Parnia's AWARE study. That stands for Awareness During Resuscitation.
Dr. Parnia is a critical care physician, and he wanted to test these experiences under incredibly rigorous, controlled hospital conditions. Just look at this timeline. At minute 0, cardiac arrest begins. By minute 2, the brain goes completely dark, no detectable electrical activity. Way down at minute 15, we finally have successful resuscitation. The glaring anomaly here is that Patient 57's accurate, external perception, his veridical recall of the nurses, the doctors, the machines, happened exactly within this dark gap, right when his brain was completely incapable of producing any subjective experience, let alone highly accurate memories of the physical room.
Which brings us to Section 2, Core Phenomenology and the Lancet study, Consistency Across Cultures. Let's look at how this goes from a single, isolated medical anomaly to a deeply consistent phenomenon across humanity.
You might think near-death experiences would be chaotic and random, right? But notice the remarkable consistency of these core elements. It's almost like a script. An out-of-body sensation, moving through a dark tunnel, encountering a brilliant light, a panoramic life review, hitting an uncrossable boundary, and finally, an unwilling return to the body. And I really want to emphasize how identical these accounts are. Whether you're looking at ancient Egyptian texts, stories from medieval Europe, or interviewing patients today in a modern cardiac ward, the structure is exactly the same.
And if you think this is super rare, think again. 18%. I want you to remember that figure. In a massive, incredibly rigorous 2001 study published in the prestigious journal The Lancet, Dutch cardiologist Dr. Pim van Lommel tracked 344 consecutive cardiac arrest survivors. A staggering 18% of them reported having a near-death experience.
Now here's where it gets wild. Look at this 8-year follow-up data. There's a night and day contrast between the NDE survivors and the non-NDE survivors. This proves that the near-death experience triggers a permanent, measurable psychological transformation. Decades later, their fear of death is significantly decreased, their compassion for others is massively increased, and their interest in material success, it basically drops off entirely. The trauma of cardiac arrest alone doesn't do this. It's the near-death experience itself that leaves this permanent mark.
Moving on to Section 3, Neurological Explanations, the limits of medical science. Because look, science demands an explanation. We have to treat the medical community's best hypotheses with genuine respect before we point out exactly where they start to fall apart. So on one side, we have some very serious neurological theories. Hypoxia, a lack of oxygen, can absolutely cause tunnel vision. REM sleep intrusion could definitely trigger that out-of-body sensation, and the brain-releasing chemicals similar to ketamine could totally explain the hyper-real quality of these visions. But look at the other side. These theories completely fail to account for accurate vertical perception. A dying, oxygen-starved, hallucinating brain simply cannot accurately perceive, process, and remember complex external reality happening in the room while it is flatlined. It just doesn't compute.
Okay, part 4. The 2023 Gamma Findings, a surge in the dark. This brings us to the very latest evidence, and it completely disrupts the old lights-out model of the dying brain.
Let's punch hard on this statistic, 40%. In 2023, Dr. Parnia's team continuously monitored the brain activity of 567 unresponsive patients undergoing CPR, and they found that approximately 40% of them exhibited unexpected, immense surges of brain activity.
Specifically, they were seeing high-frequency gamma waves surging in the posterior cortical regions. Now that's the area of the brain associated with conscious visual processing, and this was happening minutes after the heart stopped. So the crucial takeaway here is that, well, while this doesn't prove an afterlife, it definitively proves that the dying brain is undergoing highly complex, highly organized processing at the exact moment we thought it was going totally dark.
Let's pivot to Section 5, Children's NDE's Unfiltered Testimonies. This might actually be the most evidentially clean data we have. We're talking about the unfiltered testimonies of children who are way too young to even comprehend what death is.
Pediatrician Melvin Moore studied these kids extensively, and guess what? They reported experiences that were structurally identical to the adults, and they described them as just matter-of-fact reality. This brilliantly shuts down the argument that these experiences are just cultural confabulation. I mean, these 3-year-olds haven't been watching movies about the afterlife or reading religious texts, right? And most astonishingly, there are multiple verified cases of children accurately identifying and encountering deceased relatives whose deaths were completely kept secret from them by their parents. How do you explain that?
Section 6, Distressing NDEs and Transformation, the Dark Side of the Boundary. To keep an honest, unbiased scientific approach, we've got to look at the uncomfortable data that popular media usually just ignores. Because it isn't all warm, peaceful light. About 15% of documented accounts are genuinely distressing. They involve terrifying darkness, threatening presences, or feelings of profound, eternal meaninglessness.
But here's where the data takes a totally fascinating turn. Survivors of these deeply distressing, terrifying experiences, they show the exact same long-term life transformations as the people who experience the peaceful ones. This strongly suggests that the permanent shift in compassion and the reduced fear of death comes directly from encountering that absolute boundary of mortality itself, rather than just the specific content of whatever vision they had.
So, what does this all mean? All of these anomalies connect right back to the central mystery of modern neuroscience, the hard problem of consciousness. Literally, how do physical neurons firing in a biological brain actually produce the subjective, first-person experience of being you? These findings really force us to question the standard scientific assumption that the brain functions purely as a consciousness generator. What if it's acting more like a receiver?
David Chalmers, the philosopher who actually coined the phrase the hard problem, states that these accounts are among the most important empirical data points we have. Dismissing these well-documented cases isn't being a true skeptic, it's honestly just avoiding uncomfortable data that challenges our current scientific models.
So wrapping up this explainer, we really need to take a careful, objective approach. The honest, scientific position acknowledges that this phenomenon is real and happens across all cultures. We have to admit that our current neurological explanations are incomplete. Veridical perception, like seeing the room while flatlined, remains a totally unsolved puzzle. While we can't definitively say this proves an afterlife, we also can't say it's fully explained by modern medicine. The survivors and the data itself deserve rigorous scientific respect. Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to end on. If consciousness isn't entirely just produced by the physical brain, what actually happens when we reach that boundary? I really challenge you to rethink the true nature of your own mind. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking the big questions, and I'll catch you in the next one.